your struggle for pay justice and against inequality. I think from the start we have to say the organisers of today's marvellous rally and all those who've turned out and taken a stand should deserve admiration and applause for standing up against the injustices you've just been suffering.
Woo!
I also, speaking both as a socialist and a trade union activist, a trade union representative, believe that today's rally should be the launch pad of the trade union movement in Scotland, organising for a massive demonstration in support of these demands, to build on today and demand that the Scottish Government cough up the funds to invest in wages and health and care and other public services. We need that.
Woo!
And we need it because, to be absolutely brutal about the truth, poverty kills people. That was the case before COVID-19 and continues to be the case. Poverty pay, appalling levels of benefit and pensions, the work, stress and insecurity, and all the other lack of public services shorten people's lives. With the infamous example of men in Bear's Den with 11 years longer life expectancy than men across the road in Drumchapel, and the gap for women is 8 years. Poverty kills more of the poor during COVID-19, more than twice the mortality rate for the poorest sections of society. And after years of warnings from experts, the governments still refuse to invest in staff, in equipment, in personal protective equipment, in our hospitals, in our care homes and elsewhere, leading to the terrible fear of the NHS being swamped, which led to at least 1,000 elderly people being sent into care homes untested, helping to lead to the cruel carnage that's taken place in our care homes in Scotland in the last few months. That's a scandal we must resist. And how many workers have died during this? Not just because of lack of PPE, but also because they've been forced into work with the infection, with the virus, infected others, or caught it and infected more vulnerable family members because they couldn't afford to be off work. They couldn't afford lack of pay. They couldn't afford lack of sick pay. They had no savings to fall back on. That's the society we live in, which we need to change. The pandemic has shown up the obscene class divisions within society. On the one side, you've got the heroic efforts of yourselves and other frontline workers, including the supermarket workers that I represent in my union, helping to feed the population, helping to care for the sick, the elderly, the young, the vulnerable. And then on the other side, we've got reptiles like Richard Branson in his tax haven, a personal income of something like £4.2 billion, coming with his begging bowl, demanding public money to bail him out during the pandemic. So-called all in it together. It's a sickening, hypocritical nonsense when they come out with that phrase. Millions of people have lived through life-changing experiences in the recent months. Experiences that we've learned from and we need to apply the lessons of to change the society we live in. We've learned who matters in the real world. The workers in health, in care, in food production and distribution. Those who combat disease by cleaning workplaces and emptying bins. Those keeping transport and postal services alive. Those providing utilities, internet and all sorts. Millions of others who provide life's daily bread and public services. There is such a thing as the working class, the one productive and useful class in this society, the majority of the population. It wasn't the bankers, the billionaires, the hedge fund managers, the spivs and speculators of the money markets, or the grotesquely overpaid chief executives of big companies who kept us alive during the pandemic. And we're definitely not all in this together, the rich and the rest of us alike. Definitely not. One simple point proves that. Since 2010, the average health worker has lost in real wages 20% of their wage. In contrast, in grotesque, neat contrast, the average income of the 45 billionaires in Britain rose by 20% in the months of March and April alone, the months when the innocents were being slaughtered by the pandemic. That gives us a glimpse of the class divide in capitalist society that makes the great Glen in Scotland look like a narrow shoch, a word I share with you from my Irish background. Nearly half, 42% of care workers are on less than £9.30 an hour. Nearly 3/4, 71% of all farm workers, food production workers and supermarket staff are on less than £9.30. A full 1 in 3 of all key workers right across the board are on less than £10 an hour. And in contrast, the average chief executive of the 100 biggest companies has an income of £3.6 million last year. Not between them, each on average.
Boo!
No, we're not all in it together. One other thing that this experience has taught us all, I hope, is that just a year ago, when there was demands for investment in wages and in services, including health, Theresa May came out with the infamous expression, "There is no magic money tree." Well, I have to say, from my observation, there's been a bloody orchard full of them have sprouted in the last few months when the
Yes!
government hands out to the billionaires to build up businesses of their profits. We need to demand a complete and utter change from the old abnormal of poverty amidst plenty, of low wages to feed the pay of chief executives and the obscene levels of profit for the 1%, of squandering over £200 billion on weapons, trident weapons of mass human extermination, whilst pleading poverty when it comes to investment in schools, in hospitals, in care homes and public transport, or investment in the wages of what was dubbed the minimum wage heroes on the front line during the recent pandemic. We need a totally new normal, a completely different society. And we need to appeal to fellow workers to pile in alongside yourselves to demand decent wages, including an immediate pay rise. Because as you know, and people have mentioned, every Thursday at 8 o'clock at night, people hung out their windies, another word I share, hung out their windies or stood on their doorsteps to applaud the efforts of key workers. We need to go from applause to a pay rise across the board. The Tories have gone from two-faced clapping to slapping you in the face. Maybe it's time we give the Tories the clap.
Hey!
And we must ensure also that they don't get away with the divide and rule tactics that their class have exercised over centuries within the working class. We need working class unity for decent pay, for massive investment in 21st century services, and for a radical redistribution of wealth from the rich to the rest of us, from the parasitic elite to the working class majority upon whom society depends. And unity in action requires the unions, who in Scotland have 600,000 members, to step up to the plate and build further action against poverty pay, against poverty and pay injustice, and for pay before profit. And building that unity means we should take seriously the policy the Scottish TUC put out during the pandemic for an immediate £2 an hour rise for every single key worker in the country. That's one immediate demand we could ensure united. And building working class unity is also the motive behind the campaigning that the Scottish Socialist Party has consistently fought for for a decent level of legally enforced minimum wage, currently demanding at least £12 an hour for everybody at the age of 16, and with equal pay for women. In order to provide the safety net required against the very same poverty which kills thousands of workers and stunts the lives of millions of working class people. That's also why we need to abolish the abomination of 0 contracts and campaign instead for a guaranteed minimum of at least a 16-hour contract for every worker that wants that, to help to give some stability of income and livelihood. Now, to conclude, coming out of the lockdown, what do we face? I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of the talk on the lips of big company bosses and their hired politicians about a new normal. What's normal or new about flinging thousands of workers into the jaws of defeat and then treating them like dirt when it comes to payday, rejecting any idea of a pay rise? What's normal about the corporate thuggery of companies like British Airways and Centrica, ex-Scottish Gas, slashing thousands of jobs and slaughtering the wages of workers by up to 70%? What's normal or new about hundreds of thousands working 12-hour shifts and beyond, whilst other hundreds of thousands of workers are thrown on the scrap heap of being unemployed? What's normal or acceptable about company bosses victimising and sacking shop stewards who have stood up for the workforce during the course of the COVID-19 crisis? Yet all of these things and more are the boss's new normal in August 2020. The fight for decent pay for health and care workers of all grades and all skill sets is an important, immediate, critical part of the wider struggle for an utterly different kind of normal in society. One which eliminates poverty pay, which shares out the work through a 4-day week but on 5 days pay, for example, which invests in health in a nationally owned, publicly owned, free at the point of use national care service, and in things like creation of hundreds of thousands of green jobs, to build homes, to produce clean energy, to provide free public transport. That's the kind of normal I believe in that we should step towards. A Scotland where we unite to force the Scottish Government to fund a secure livelihood for all and first-class public services for all, by taxing the rich and by taking all these vital public services back into public ownership, and by taking the natural wealth and the industrial wealth and the bankers' wealth into the hands of the public, of society. Stand firm, brothers and sisters. Stand firm in your entirely justified cause. You do not stand alone. Stand united. Build this movement and help to win an entirely different future where poverty, inequality and exploitation is consigned to the history books. Keep fighting. Thanks.
Woo!